In the fast-moving world of pop music, even the biggest stars can hit a rough patch, but it only takes one album to put them back on track. In this video, we'll look at 8 albums that ended flop eras in the 2020s. Plastic Hearts by Miley Cyrus. Before the release of Plastic Hearts in November 2020, Miley Cyrus was kind of in her flop era. Her 2017 album Younger Now was a pivot towards a country-influenced sound, but it failed to generate strong streaming numbers or lasting chart impact, and it produced only one notable hit, Malibu, which peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, but the rest of the era fizzled quickly. Adding to this was the underwhelming reception of her 2019 EP She Is Coming. By the end of the 2010s, Miley's chart relevance seemed to be slipping, with many fans questioning where she would go next. Then, Plastic Hearts was released at the end of 2020 and marked a bold reinvention, leaning heavily into rock and synth-pop influences. Miley collaborated with legends like Stevie Nicks, Joan Jett, and Billy Idol. The lead single Midnight Sky became her biggest solo hit in years, peaking at number 14 in the US. And dominating streaming and trending heavily on TikTok. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and was met with strong reviews. It also got attention from publications like Rolling Stone, ranking it among the best albums of the year. The success of Plastic Hearts effectively ended Miley's commercial slump. Its streaming numbers held steady, and the project helped set the stage for her even bigger comeback with 2023's Flowers, which became her first solo #1 hit in over a decade. By proving she is one of the most versatile artists in the modern era, Plastic Hearts became the album that closed the book on her late 2010s flop era. Justice by Justin Bieber. Leading up to Justice in March 2021, Justin Bieber's momentum was recovering from a rocky stretch. His 2015 album Purpose was a global blockbuster, but his follow-up 2020's Changes was a different story. Changes debuted at #1, but got lukewarm reviews because of the lack of variety in production and the bizarre marketing strategies that really affected his public perception. Many critics called it one of the weakest albums of his career, and even though Bieber still had name recognition, his ability to dominate the charts like before seemed so far gone. But with Justice, he shifted gears towards a more radio-friendly sound. The album's rollout was strategic. The lead single Holy with Chance the Rapper built anticipation, while Anyone and Hold On catered to different segments of his fan base. The true turning point, however, was Peaches, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the most defining pop songs of 2021. Justice itself debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, giving Bieber his 8th chart-topping album, and his streaming numbers blew past Changes by a large margin, now more than double. The success of the album signaled the end of Bieber's post-Purpose slump. It brought him back to the top, earning him multiple Grammy nominations including Album of the Year, and had several multi-platinum singles. By balancing commercial pop appeal with a more mature image, Justice served as the reset button Bieber needed, restoring his momentum. Think Later by Tate McRae. Before Think Later, Tate McRae's momentum seemed to be stalling. Her debut album I Used to Think I Could Fly in 2022 received lukewarm reviews, and while it had moderate streaming success, it lacked a breakout global hit to solidify her as one of Gen Z's leading pop stars. Singles like She's All I Wanna Be and What Would You Do charted modestly, but they didn't even get to the level of her breakout hit You Broke Me First, which is now sitting on 1.7 billion Spotify streams. Tate risked fading into the crowded space of one-hit wonders who never truly broke through. Think Later changed everything. With a strong sonic identity rooted in smooth dance pop and R&B, she leaned into a confident, radio-ready sound. The lead single Greedy became an instant smash, exploding on TikTok and racing up the global charts, ultimately becoming the biggest hit of her career, reaching 1.9 billion Spotify streams. The follow-up singles, including Exes, kept the momentum alive, proving she could sustain attention, not just have a one-off viral moment. The album built the commercial momentum. Think Later debuted significantly higher than her debut, peaking at #4 and being certified platinum in the US. By combining savvy social media promotion and iconic visuals, Tate McRae managed to shake up the game. She followed it up with So Close to What earlier this year, which became her first #1 album in the US. Think Later ended her flop era and went on to define her career. Utopia by Travis Scott. Before Utopia, Travis Scott's momentum had taken a hit. While Astroworld in 2018 was a blockbuster dominating the charts, the years following were marked by a long musical drought and the fallout from the Astroworld Festival tragedy in 2021. His public perception was at an all-time low, and some doubted whether he could reclaim his status as one of hip-hop's biggest stars. When Utopia finally dropped in July 2023, it proved all the doubters wrong. Featuring high-profile collaborations with Beyonce, Drake, The Weeknd, and SZA, the album combined experimental production with straight-up bangers. It debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, with over 496,000 units sold in its first week, making it one of the biggest openings of the year. The album's success instantly restored Travis's place in the upper echelon of rap. Singles like Meltdown and Fiend became festival anthems, and Utopia ended up becoming one of the most streamed rap albums of 2023. Travis ended his flop era and maintained his star power. Emails I Can't Send by Sabrina Carpenter. Sabrina Carpenter had been building a career since her Disney Channel days, but her earlier music releases in the late 2010s and early 2020s had modest chart presence and were overshadowed by her acting career. The 2021 Olivia Rodrigo-Joshua Bassett drama thrust her into the spotlight because of the love triangle, not really the music, and some critics doubted whether she could stand out as a serious pop artist. Her 2019 album Singular Act 2 had lukewarm commercial impact, which left her in need of a strong musical statement. Released in July 2022, Emails I Can't Send became the album that started her run. A sharp pivot into a more mature and witty songwriting, the album put her on the map. The single Nonsense became a huge hit, with the different outros for the song on her live performances becoming a thing on social media. Then Feather became a viral smash in 2023, peaking at #21 on the Billboard Hot 100. While it didn't debut at the top of the charts, its streaming longevity turned it into a sleeper hit, eventually becoming her most commercially successful album at the time. Then, she really got her moment in 2024, becoming the breakout artist of the year, with singles like Espresso and Please 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 becoming chart toppers. Emails I Can't Send transformed her career, and short and sweet, made her one of pop's biggest stars. Brat by Charli XCX. Before Brat, Charli XCX's career had been riding a critical high, but not necessarily a commercial one. Her previous albums, including How I'm Feeling Now in 2020 and Crash in 2022, cemented her status as a pop innovator, but they didn't fully translate into global chart dominance. While Crash was her highest charting album at the time, it struggled to produce a truly massive hit, like her early breakout Boom Clap. Some of her fans even wondered if Charli was destined to remain a cult favorite rather than a mainstream pop powerhouse. The hype around her next album was there, but no one could have predicted the impact it would have. When Brat dropped in 2024, it was clear Charli had found the perfect formula to merge her underground credibility with pop sensibility. Leaning into a club sound inspired by the early 2000s, she crafted a project that resonated with both longtime fans and a new wave of listeners. The album's singles like Von Dutch brought a sharper, more confident edge, while tracks like 360 and Apple became online phenomena. Charli's decision to fully embrace a fun aesthetic and the innovative marketing strategy made it one of the best-selling albums of 2024, selling more than 1 million records in the US in the year alone. Commercially, Brat became a defining moment in her career. It not only sold better than her previous work, but it also shifted her public perception from a cult pop star to a legitimate mainstream superstar. The album broke barriers, making it one of the clearest examples of an album ending a flop era in the 2020s. Virgin by Lorde. Before the release of Virgin, Lorde was coming off Solar Power, a pivot towards a breezy acoustic sound that didn't do as well as she expected. It was a letdown, as it was her comeback after a 4-year hiatus. And over the next years, Lorde went quiet, apart from her collaborations with artists like Charli XCX, ending a years-long tension that laid the groundwork for her return. Released on June 27, 2025, Virgin was the comeback our fans were waiting for. The album's aesthetics, with the cover featuring an X-ray pelvic image with an IUD, made it clear that it was going to be an introspective project. In the US, it debuted at #2 on the Billboard 200, moving 71,000 units in its first week. The album also topped the UK albums chart, a first time for Lorde, taking her to another level. What Was That became the biggest single from the album, peaking at #36 on the Hot 100 and number 11 on the UK singles chart. Lorde found her way back to the top this year after a flop album in a quiet period, not chasing trends, but with production that set her apart from formulaic pop. The album was a return to form for an artist that changed the sound of pop when she first came out. F1 Trillion by Post Malone. Post Malone entered the 2020s on a high after the massive success of Hollywood's Bleeding, but the years that followed were rockier. His 2022 album 12 Carat Toothache underperformed compared to his earlier projects, with no massive #1 single to sustain its momentum. Critics saw it as a flop era, and for the first time in his career, Posty's dominance on streaming platforms seemed to be slipping. The next album, Austin, couldn't turn things around, becoming one of the lowest selling albums of his career. In 2024, F1 Trillion marked a new chapter, leaning into a country pop sound. The album tapped into a new audience. The lead single, I Had Some Help with Morgan Wallen, stayed at the top of the Hot 100 for 6 weeks and became one of the year's biggest hits. F1 Trillion debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, selling 250,000 units in its first week. The album's success set the stage for a new era for Posty, just as country was starting to take over the charts. Which albums that ended flop eras in the 2020s did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.